The Golden Demon Awards have come to an end, celebrating some of the best built and painted miniatures in the world. It's the dream of so many to come home with one of the fabled Golden Demon trophies and lift the iconic Slayer sword above their heads, forever marking them as one of the best in the world. Unfortunately, the last few days were just as concerning as they've been enlightening. I began to hear about the troubles surrounding the Essen event, and subsequently the gradual decline of the Golden Demon Awards over the last few years. And as I listen to the world's greatest painters, I can't help but wonder, is it even worth competing anymore? This is Cursed Crusader Arts. With all the discussion around the judgment process and unclear rules surrounding the Golden Demon Awards, I worry about the hobbyists at home who build and paint the best miniatures they can whilst looking up to some of the greatest miniature painters we have today, only to see those elevated idols seemingly cast aside and not given the recognition they deserve by Games Workshop. Now this is just a quick disclaimer, I was not at the Golden Demon Awards, so I'm not really here to talk about what happened at the event. I don't know everything about the judgment process, how many judges were there, and what the mindset was around the decisions that were made. I want to focus on the builders, the kit bashers, the painters, and the wargamers. What can something like this do to someone regardless of their age or experience? To do that, I want to paint you a picture and go back in time to when I first started Warhammer. It's 2008. My family have just moved house and I'm starting in a new school, when one of the teachers suggests that I visit the Wargaming Club after school. This was an attempt to encourage me to make new friends, and as a result I was introduced to the dystopian world of Warhammer and Warhammer 40k. I distinctly remember gathering around a small army of Ultramarines with other younger students. This army was owned by one of the senior 6th formers, who patiently took the time to let us look at all of his miniatures and teach us how to play the game. Excited to give it a try, I learnt about the factions and decided to play as the Chaos Space Marines. My parents eventually bought me a 1500 point army off of eBay, and soon I was running around causing havoc and blowing holes in everything I could see with my Defiler. I enjoyed my ragtag warband of Chaos Space Marines, but eventually I wanted something that was my own. And just like in the lore, I found myself seduced by the whisperings of Slaanesh, leading me to paint my own army of Emperor's children. The art skills I was trying to develop were difficult to do on paper, but with these little plastic and metal miniatures, I felt I was able to accomplish anything. And a few months in, I entered my first painting competition. The rules were simple. We were given a basic Space Marine, one of the starter minis that you could clip the bolt gun to the chest. We could paint it up however we wanted, but it could only be the one model. So there was no major conversions or making fancy dioramas or combat scenarios. I began looking at different Space Marine chapters to decide which one that I wanted to paint. And eventually I decided to try the Legion of the Damned, fiery spectres that appeared out of nowhere in the most dire situations, razing the ground and destroying the Emperor's foes like an army of Ghost Riders, before seemingly vanishing into thin air as if they were never there. I did the best I could with my limited knowledge and skills, trying to use the washing and dry brushing methods that my dad had taught me before. When I was finished, I had a miniature that I was proud of. Back then I didn't really understand how difficult it was to paint black armour, and certainly not how difficult it is to do freehand, of which I certainly did plenty. Nonetheless, I was proud of my work and I entered my Space Marine to the competition, alongside my dad, who also entered his own Space Marine. I believe there was only 2 judges, which included the store's manager, who had become used to me visiting to buy blister packs of metal obliterators and chaos havocs to add heavy weapons to my army. He was always offering tips and tricks to help me improve my painting skills, and when we entered our Space Marines he treated them with care and respect, putting them on display where any customer could see them when they came to the store. My dad rose triumphant, winning either 2nd or 3rd place. I, however, was not so lucky, but I was happy to have been there. I was complimented on trying to paint something so difficult using black armour and freehand was something that was not expected of someone of my age and experience. Everyone there was exceptionally friendly and eager to give advice to everybody that was there. Even the first place winner was given tips and tricks so that he could improve as well. As I took in all the information and went home, instead of being upset because I'd lost the competition, I was excited to try new things and build new models. Naturally, the purpose of this little competition was to try and draw in more customers to the store, but it also served another and greater purpose. This other purpose was to bring together a small fraction of the Warhammer community. The older men talked about the old Warhammer days when Space Marines ran around with virus bomb grenades and Orcs wore power armor. But it also served to encourage people to enjoy building, painting and playing with these miniatures and to learn and grow their skills. A few years later I learnt of the Golden Demon Awards, and I decided that I wanted to give it a shot in the hopes of coming home with a trophy. I read all of the rules and learnt about every single category there was to enter, and eventually I ended up entering into the Warhammer 40,000 vehicle category, which was a tough competition to be sure. The odds were stacked against me, especially as I was now too old to enter into the Youngbloods category. Nonetheless, I gave it my all. I wanted the pink to be bright but still have darker undertones around the edges, so I painted the pink on top of a red base layer. I used a combination of golds and silvers to show the opulent nature of the Noise Marines, and I also understood that their senses had been lifted to such a high level that they could only see the most vibrant of colours. So I added bright blue, green and yellow details that I thought would catch the eye. To contrast all this pink, I used a dark base littered with skulls. But that wasn't enough, and I remembered it destroying an Orc Stomper in one of our battles at home. So I added the faceplate of a Stomper to the base to demonstrate my Dreadnought's combat prowess. Even today, it's still my favourite model, even though he's old and battered, having been broken and repaired several times over. I went to the competition, entered my mini, where I was given my participant slip and a little green badge that I wore with pride as I watched the staff carefully take my model. I remember them treating it with such care and respect, complimenting me on my hard work and wishing me luck for the competition that was ahead. Now I wouldn't see my model for a few hours as I went off to the Black Library section to meet some of my favourite authors. But when I went back to the display cabinets, my dreams came true. There it was in all its pink and gold glory. My Dreadnought was stood in the cabinet next to all the other competitors, the greatest painters in the world. I talked to so many people about their entries and eagerly pointed out my own to anyone who took the time to listen. I soaked up advice like a sponge, drinking it up as if I was dying of thirst. All day I waited eagerly for the announcement to be made to see if I had won a trophy. And to my surprise, I didn't win anything, but it didn't matter. Off I went to collect my Dreadnought, and the staff were sympathising with me kindly, but giving me even more advice and encouraging me to try again next year. For me, this is the heart and soul of the hobby, and it's one of the key factors that not only brought me back to the hobby earlier on this year, but helps me to push forward, learn and develop my skills, and paint not just in the way that we see in the box art, but to develop my own style. It also gives me the opportunity to encourage more people to go beyond what the kit alone provides, to kit bash or convert models, and to paint in unconventional styles that will catch the eye. So you can imagine my confusion and disappointment when I heard what some of the entrants to this year's competition had to say. I first came across Zumakito's video where he talked about his Dark Eldar Incubi and his Nurgle Warband, all fantastically painted models. Then there was Squidmar, with their various entries including the Necromunda Enforcer. I loved all their work, getting inspired to try new things, but something was wrong, and it was something I hadn't anticipated. Limited judges, unclear rules, and odd decisions that didn't make sense kept cropping up. Not just in one video, but in all of them. Incredible pieces of art that many in the community expected to be among the top tier miniatures didn't even get through the first levels of the competition and get the recognition that they deserved. But perhaps it was a fluke. Maybe someone just didn't get the results they wanted and were upset about it. Except that isn't the case. As I began to take a deeper look into the Golden Demon Awards, I began to see the same thing from so many people about the decline of the Golden Demon Awards. It wasn't just Zumakito or Squidmar, but videos from The Cult of Paint, Travarian, and Richard Gray all began popping up, eventually leading me to Vince Venturella's video about why he will no longer compete in the Golden Demon Awards. All of the entrants have done a spectacular job, and it's a shame to see just how jaded the community feels, so what's the point in competing anymore? Should you even bother entering into the Golden Demon Awards? Every competition has two purposes. One is for the business, and the other is for its customers or community. It's necessary to make good business decisions for the longevity of the company, enabling them to get a big injection of funds by selling all manner of things from books to miniatures, all the way down to the tickets themselves. But it shouldn't come at the emotional expense of its customers. After listening to so many people and reading so many comments, it's apparent that Games Workshop is losing its connection to its customers. When I entered, it was understood that you could use any licensed miniature by Citadel, and even make your own parts by sculpting green stuff and Milliput. It was clear that you could not use third-party miniatures or parts, which made sense from a business perspective. But the problem now is that the rules are not clear enough on what is or is not allowed in your entry, nor are the categories diverse enough for a fair competition. Why were vehicles and large creatures lumped into the same category when the flesh of a Tyranid Biotitan is so very different to the armour of an Eldar Wraith Knight, demanding vastly different approaches? Why do the staff compete in the open category where they easily dwarf the customers by their reputation alone? Surely it would not only be more fair, but also more interesting to have a category only dedicated to the heavy metal team, where we can see what the company envisions whilst having a friendly internal competition. I'm also baffled that with so many entries that there are only a few judges. Clearly a minimum of 5 judges should be present for such a large number of entries to be judged within a short amount of time. The models need to be given the time and respect that they deserve, and on top of that, tell us what you're looking for. We've come a long way since Games Workshop had terrain made of cardboard and cocktail sticks. Now we have world-class painters entering every year, and it's impossible not to compare your work to theirs, especially if they're not succeeding in the very first few levels. Ultimately, the decision is yours whether or not you still want to compete. Golden Demon may not be the same as what we remember, and the rules may not always be clear, but I beg you not to give up on the hobby itself. Vince's video is exceptional in his desire to paint what he wants to paint, and in the way that he wants to paint them without the tight restrictions of the Golden Demon Awards hanging over him like a shadow. Like many others, I still dream of bringing home a Golden Demon trophy of my own. But the question now is, what do you want? If you see yourself with the trophy or lifting the Slayer sword, then I implore you, keep going. Keep entering, keep trying your best. Learn as much as you can. If not, perhaps there are other trophies from other competitions that you're seeking out, and enter those instead. At the end of the day, this is a hobby, and it's about having fun with toy soldiers with our friends. We all want to be the best at what we do, and we should work hard to achieve the very best we can. But you should only enter a competition because you want to, and you should never go in with the expectation that you're going to win. Do it because you had fun. Do it because you want to meet new people. Seeing the Cult of Paint's entry on an elk being healed was a great change of pace when surrounded by the horrors of war, and I'd love to see more people try something similar. Likewise, we saw this Ultramarine that was painted to heavy metal perfection, the rank and file of any army. If you entered and won, congratulations! You deserve every accolade that you've earned. Every single one was incredible. If you entered and did not win, keep pushing, keep improving, ask people what they think, gather as much advice and information as you can, and try your best to improve. It's normal to feel disappointed when you don't succeed, but remember, you were there. You entered into the biggest and most proficient miniature painting competition in the world. So come home, regroup, start planning out your next one, and make it even better than the last. If you feel discouraged, I want you to remember that you shouldn't compare your miniatures to the other entrants. There are so many variables to consider. Should I not compete because my favourite entrants sported non-metallic painting and I like to use true metals? Should I be discouraged because I like a grimdark or Blanchitsu style instead of heavy metal? Not at all. We saw winners whose styles varied like night and day. I understand that it's disheartening to see the current state of the Golden Demon Awards, and I can understand if you don't want to compete anymore, but keep building and painting the miniatures that you want to make. But what do you want to make? Click here to see my creative process of starting a new project. And whatever you do, make things, have fun, and I'll see you next time on Cursed Crusader Arts.